This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, what's going on, Lobo Nation? We welcome you to another episode of the Pit Press Live. UNM men's basketball gets a big 81-76 win over San Diego State in the Pit yesterday afternoon. This was the final game for the Aztecs in the Pit. It was nothing short of a classic matchup between these storied rivals. SDSU got the first game 83-79. This time, it was the Lobos who made more plays down the stretch and sent the Aztecs packing back to America's finest city. With the win, UNM advances to 22-7 on the season, 13-5 in conference play. They're tied with the Aztecs for second place in the Mountain West Conference standings. I'm your host tonight, Nick Nunez, joined by the voice of Western New Mexico athletics and a Lobo fan since 1970. Dad, how you doing tonight?
Good, son. Yeah, it's been a day full of basketball. We were just on the seeding the selection show for high school, so now we're doing some Lobo wrap-up. We're expected to be joined by our special guest in just a few minutes.
And our special guest tonight, we hope that it'll be Mark Zeigler of the San Diego Union Tribune. Mark Ziegler covers all San Diego athletics. He was at the Pit yesterday afternoon covering the game. You can find him on X at SDU Ziegler. And we hope to be joined by Mark Ziegler here in a couple minutes. But, Dad, man, what a finish it was. The 81-76 win for the Lobos. The Lobos go down by 11 points, 30-19, with about 6 minutes in the first half. It really seemed like San Diego State was controlling both sides of the ball. The Lobos played better the final 6 minutes of that first half, and we're only down 37-36. Dad, what were your biggest takeaways from the first half in the game?
I think we talked about that. I thought San Diego State set some really good picks, had some good action at the top of the key, and were able to get their shooters free. Miles Bird had 17. B.J. Davis had 11 points all in the first half. They were spreading the floor. They put B.J. Davis in the corner. He had a couple of threes. So I thought their offensive ball screens were pretty good. New Mexico had a hard time fighting over those screens in the first half, and you saw a lot of separation from shooters. A couple of challenges by Jake Hall in the lane. He challenged some shots, and they still made them. At one point, they led 30-19 with 5:59 left in the first half. After that, UNM outscored San Diego State 62-46 from that point on. So, but you have to give it to the Aztecs in the first half. And I said that to Mark Ziegler, our special guest. I said UNM is having I think there's Mark Ziegler right there. You want to introduce our guest, son?
Yeah, absolutely. We're joined by Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune. Mark, you were in the Pit yesterday. Fantastic game between San Diego State and UNM. The final game in the Pit. What were your biggest takeaways from the game?
Well, I got to sit next to your dad, so that was a highlight.
Absolutely.
My apologies for not getting back sooner. I was up in Los Angeles visiting my daughter, and traffic on Sunday nights can be brutal getting back to San Diego, and it was tonight. But yeah, my biggest takeaway was that, look, this has been a great series, right? This thing has been going on since the 70s. I think it was the 46th game they played. These two teams have played in the Pit. And it was a good farewell, and it was worthy of the series. And he sort of honored the series and these two teams. It was a classic, and it went, that it went down to the wire. Great atmosphere. Had a little bit of everything. Had clutch shots on both sides. A little bit of controversy there. 30 seconds to go, and both teams are fighting for first place, which is what you want in this type of game.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And, we were just kind of taking it half by half, breaking down the game. We were talking about that start for San Diego State. They go up 30-19 on the Lobos, and again, really seemed to dictate the pace at both ends of the floor. But defensively, UNM started this game the first 10 minutes. They were 4 of 14 from the field. Tomislav Buljan had not quite put his imprint on the game at that point. What did you see San Diego State doing defensively early, Mark, that set the tone?
One thing I noticed, which they do to everybody, is they're really physical. And so when you're setting screens, you got to fight over the screens. They fight you, and they kind of bump you, and they make you start your offense out a little bit further. You don't get the same angles that you normally would. They were switching everything. I think that is just shock to a system of it. Eric Olen said afterwards, he goes, you can't, or he said the day before, actually, you can't really simulate that in practice. The length, the athleticism, the physicality, and the switching, and what it does to your offense. And so I think all those things kind of threw them off guard. But, as the game went on, they got used to it. They made some adjustments, the Lobos did, and sort of got a little bit more of an offensive rhythm.
We're speaking with Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune, breaking down UNM's 81-76 win over San Diego State. Mark, let's take it to the second half. 1-point game going into halftime. SDSU leads the Lobos 37-36. Pretty back and forth through most of that second half. UNM takes its first lead of the second period, 48-47 at the 15:07 mark. 2 free throws from Luke Hopt. Lots of angles, again, Mark, to kind of spin in this one. But the second half really is when Tomislav Buljan, the 23-year-old freshman who made a huge difference for the Lobos, 24 points, 18 rebounds. 9 of those rebounds were offensive rebounds. And Buljan was a huge part of UNM getting 16 second chance points. The first time UNM played San Diego State, Mark, Buljan had really put his imprint on the game there. He had another double-double. Why did SDSU have a hard time defending him?
San Diego State has a big team and a pretty physical team, but for some reason they struggle with him. I mean, the first game, like you mentioned, 20-14, and then 24-18 in this game. I think, one of the things that's really hard with him, he's a deceiving player because he's a quick jumper. And so a lot of times, and I'd like to go back and track how many of those offensive rebounds were off his own misses, where he comes in, he shoots it, and he kind of bumps you out of the way, and then it goes up to get it before you even have a chance to recover and gather yourself. And so I think that was one of the problems. Another problem was that when you're in a switch 5, which means they're going to switch the 1-5 ball screen and put a guard on him, the guard is going to try to front him. If you front him, fine, he might not get the ball in the post, but if a shot goes up, he's got inside position. And that's what you sort of sacrifice when you switch 5, because you can't play the guard behind the big man on the switch, or he's just going to get the ball turn inside and dunk it. So you have to front him trying to get the ball from entering. And if you're successful, and San Diego State's pretty good at that, you give up the offensive rebound or the possibility of the offensive rebound on the back end. And it wasn't until the last few minutes that San Diego State went away from the switch 5 and went just to ordinary drop coverage, and had a little bit more success against him. And you saw him not score quite as much or get as many rebounds. But there was that stretch there from the beginning of the second half till about 4 or 5 minutes left that he just dominated.
Dad.
Marquis mentioned that about Mugun Guath, who didn't play in the first game at Viejas. He got hurt and then had to go out. He didn't contribute much. He was hurt. But Mugun Guath, he mentioned, Buljan said he's a great defender, but he's not strong. And I thought Buljan went right into the body of Guath a couple of times, negated that size advantage. And he said in the press conference afterward that he felt he had heard some of the whispers that he hadn't been able to finish in last couple of games. He had struggled with length and got frustrated, got a technical foul up at Fresno State. And so he seemed yesterday to be on a mission, man, 24-18. With the game New Mexico had to have. But you mentioned BJ Davis, a good first half. They were spreading before. You mentioned the picks that they set. You and I talked about that a little bit. San Diego State was able to. They ran some good action at the top of the key. BJ Davis in the corner, skip pass. I don't know how many threes he hit in the first half, but he was quiet in the second half. He didn't score in the second half.
Yeah.
What do you think happened there?
He's kind of blown hot and cold, and he's in a little bit of a new role again. I mean, he's been sort of the odd man out in terms of their rotation, in that he's always been part of it, but he's had a different role throughout the season. He started off the season coming off the bench, did a great job. Was really their best player, was their leading scorer through the first half of the season, probably. Then he hit a little bit of a lull, and then they had the injuries where LZ Harrington and Magoon Gwath went out. They put him into the starting lineup, and he started, I think, about 7 straight games. But not only was he starting, but he's also playing the point guard. And now that they've got LZ Harrington healthy again, they moved Harrington back into the starting lineup as the point guard. And now BJ is coming off the bench as a backup 2. And so he's kind of readjusting to that role, I think. And so you see kind of these hot and cold flashes. And you saw in the first half is what he can be. And in the second half, you saw sort of the quiet BJ. And that hurt him a lot. I think the defense probably paid a little bit more attention to him. But that was one of the keys of the game is sort of shutting him down.
I thought Miles Bird had a nice game. He lit the Lobos up for 17, 3 of 5 from 3-point land. This is a team that has length, they have size, they have athleticism. And I was I think we're a little bit worried when Magoon Gwath was going to come back in, because New Mexico had just struggled the game before with length. But I don't know that anybody could have predicted Buljan having that monster of a game of 24 and 18. Luke Hopt from the San Diego area. Him and Jake Hall both. Luke Hopt said it afterward that he'd always gone. He'd seen the Aztecs, gone to Viejas a couple times. Had seen them on TV, but had not been recruited by them. What's your impressions of Luke Hopt and Jake Hall?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Luke. So I write something called 3 Thoughts After Every Game. And he's my first thought. And the thought is that, look, San Diego State obviously didn't want to lose the game. But if they're going to lose in the way that they lost it, it's like it kind of mitigates the pain a little bit, because Luke Hopt is so respected by all members of the San Diego State team and coaching staff. They know him. His father is a legendary coach in the area. Luke grew up going to San Diego State games. His dad played at San Diego State and University of San Diego, one of the few players ever to do that. There's only been one other. And Trey Kell, very good player at San Diego State for years, played at Luke's high school, St. Augustine High School, for his dad. And so Luke grew up as a young kid watching Trey Kell play, idolizing him, and then watching Trey play at San Diego State. So there was a lot of meaning there, but the coaching staff all knows him. The players all know him from the summer league that's in San Diego and from open gyms. And Luke, he's a really, really good, genuine guy. And so it's almost like, they're bummed they lost, but to see him have that success and have that moment with that 3-pointer with 43 seconds left to basically win the game, I think they're just kind of like, good for Luke. He's had a rough go. He went to Division II, played there for five years, but he had a COVID year. He lost a year and a half basically to a knee injury, had the grueling comeback from that, and finally gets his moment in Division I and makes a shot like that against his hometown team. I mean, it's kind of a cool moment, and I was happy to get experience. I know Luke a little bit, and I can't say enough about him as a guy. And as far as Jake goes, I sat with his parents on the flight out the night before, and I just met him once before, but what a great family, and just like the Hops, incredible family. I think Eric Olen recruits families as much as he recruits players sometimes. Luke and Jake are both kind of similar in that, didn't get a lot of love in San Diego. And that's partly because San Diego is not kind of very cyclical in basketball. And I think there's a lot more talent than people realize here, but it's kind of an under-recruited area. And both of them are under-recruited players, and they both end up on this stage playing against San Diego State. A cool moment for them and their families.
Perfect fits for Eric Olen and his offense, and they're missing their what they call their other connector, Chris Howell. And, Luke Hopt had 20 points in 4 games. And what I had asked Coach Olen He's not a volume scorer. We know that, but he's a connector. He starts scoring, then he's going to pass off. He makes winning plays. He's not going to go out of his lane and make plays that he knows he can't make. And you mentioned that shot yesterday was such a big one. Nick and I can't really cheer because we're on press row, but my son has to settle for an elbow to his chest anytime the Lobos do anything good. So, and he had to settle for a few yesterday. But I want to ask you one more question before I turn it back over to my son. You mentioned you've been covering sports in San Diego for a long time, and you watched Eric Olen. And I asked you yesterday, were you surprised that he had success that early? And you said no, you weren't. Expand upon that. You've watched him for a while. I got
to know him quite a bit. I mean,
tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, so the first time I met him, he was an assistant, and he was assistant to a guy named Chris Carlson, who is one of my best friends in the world. A guy grew up in San Diego, and he was on Ben Hallen's staff. Went to a bunch of Final Fours at UCLA. He was a staff at Pitt, Northern Arizona, and then took the head coaching job at University of San Diego and hired Eric Olen. And so I got to know him just through Chris, and always thought he was a great guy, his assistant coach. And then he takes over. Chris got a job as an associate commissioner at the West Coast Conference and took it in October, right before the season started. They didn't have time to do a search and just gave the job on an interim basis to Eric. He did so well, they kept him, and he was sort of off in the races. But I always knew he was going to be a great coach. And his teams at University of San Diego, I mean, you see San Diego, were always really fun to watch in the Division II era. And then they transitioned to Division I, and you could just see it growing. And the team he had last year was just special. And the way that he developed them, the way they played, the way they took Michigan down to the wire and almost could have, would have, should have beaten them. You just knew he was going to be great. And I think the hardest thing was coming and rebuilding a roster from scratch. But in some respects, I think that helped him because he has a very, very particular style of play, both offensively and defensively. And he has very, very particular skill sets that he's looking for and statistical packages he's looking for. And he could build the entire roster. He didn't have to inherit 7 guys who didn't really fit and it played under another system at New Mexico. And I think that gets a little awkward sometimes. He didn't have to do that. And so I think in a weird way that helped him, but I'm not surprised at all he's had this kind of success. And, I wouldn't be surprised also if he's at somewhere else next year because there's going to be a lot of people who've taken notice and they're going to come after him.
Boom, stabbed through the heart for, Lobo fans.
Sorry about that. This is the reality of college basketball right now.
No. We'll talk about, we're going to ask you about that in a little bit. Nick, go ahead. He's muted.
Can you lip read him? He's your son.
Yeah, just texted him, but I don't think he got it.
Sorry about that. I was on mute.
Okay.
Apologies.
We were trying to lip read you.
I was trying to, yeah.
For sure. Mark, what I was saying was you wrote a nice column in the San Diego Union Tribune titled San Diego State Loses to the Lobos in Albuquerque, and it's the Pits. One of the things you talked about was the free throw disparity in this game. UNM goes 25 of 36 from the line. SDSU is 13 of 22. The free throws were, I don't want to say even in the second half, kind of close. San Diego State goes 12 of 18 from the line in the second half. UNM goes 18 of 24, so 6 more free throws for UNM. But what did you attribute to the free throw disparity in this game, Mark, and why kind of both teams struggled at the line?
I think San Diego fans are going to say, "Oh, the refs were, were influenced by the crowd." I don't think so. I think it was they were pretty fair. I mean, there were some iffy calls, went both ways. I mean, there was the call with 30 seconds left. That's a whole different story, and they screwed that up. But in terms of the free throws,
yeah.
I think the Lobos were a little bit more aggressive, attack the basket. And, one thing they do very well is when teams switch, they work to get the switch they want, and then they attack that matchup. And they're looking for either to get to the rim or to draw a foul. San Diego State, they like to block shots, and they're very good at it, but they also leave their feet. And once you leave your feet, if you're a good team, you're playing off 2 feet, you can jump into the player and draw those fouls. So I think, a couple of the 4 of those free throws at the end were on purpose. So I think you got to throw those out. But, look, San Diego State probably had enough free throws to win the game. They just needed to make a few of them, and they couldn't. And they've been a pretty good free throw shooting team this year. But, you get on the road, it's a tough environment. I asked Miles Bird about it, and he said, look, yeah, obviously you want to make more free throws. He goes, but this is a very, very tough environment. And he was very, very complimentary of the crowd and how loud it was in there and how they knew and kind of feel it was the last of an era in terms of games between these teams in the pit. And he said, tip your cap to them. They make it really hard for you, and you're going to miss free throws.
Yeah, Mark, wanted to switch gears and kind of ask you about the final 4 minutes of the game. And then I do want to ask you a little bit about the controversial call with Uriah Tenet trapped in the corner. But, man, the final 4 minutes of this game was so entertaining because it was so back and forth. I think it was 69-63, UNM was up. And, man, San Diego State just hit some tough shots to just stay in the game. You got that Sean Newman three-pointer off an offensive rebound. Miles Bird hits a huge three from the left corner to make it 74-74. But just talk about that shot making in the final 4 minutes, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the game, it's an 11-point game early. Lobos come back. It's a 1-point game of the half. And at that point, you're just going, this second half is just going to go back and forth the whole way. And it did. I mean, it was spectacular to watch. It was basically 20 straight minutes, and then you get down in the final four. And now it adds sort of the urgency to every play. And, obviously New Mexico made one more play really than San Diego State did, made one more shot. But, some of the shots were very difficult. And also there were some free throws there too that guys had to step up and make, and did. Both teams were probably a little bit tired at that point. The crowd, as you know, in press row, when people stand, you got to kind of stand sometimes to see what's going on. And people were standing almost the entire second half. And it just was a cool environment. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, no doubt it was. The pit is a special place, man. We're definitely going to miss San Diego State not being in the pit. But, man, what a terrific final game it was. Obviously, kind of a lot of conversation around the final play. And I want to thank the Twitter handle Matt Shergley619 for really capturing this replay of the final 43 seconds when this call was made. Uriah Tenet gets trapped in the corner by LZ Harrington and by Tay Simmons. And Mark, as this plays, we want to get your thoughts on it. But the call on the floor was that it went out on San Diego State. It was reviewed for quite a long time. You can see multiple angles here. Tenet is trapped, a lot of hands, loses the ball. I want to say the explanation that was given was that it wasn't conclusive, that it wasn't off San Diego State. It may have touched an Aztec player. But just kind of your overall thoughts, Mark, on this call here.
So there's a couple things. The first thing is, what's the call on the floor going to be? And if you look at Steve McJunkins, the official who was right there on the sideline, he hesitates, which tells you he's not completely certain what it should be. He's a little bit shielded the way where the ball went out. And he hesitates just for a split second, and then he tries to sell it and says it's Lobos ball. So then Brian Dutcher is going to challenge it. And one thing to note is, in the first half, Brian Dutcher calls, you have to use it or lose it timeout. And he calls it with, I think, 6 or 7 minutes left in the half. I think he called it as much for rest with the elevation and give his team a little bit of a breather. So now if he wants to call another one, it's going to cost him. It's going to come out of his allotment. He likes to save them. And he doesn't call one while the Lobos are making that run late in the half that brought it back to a 1-point game. And I think some people probably he sometimes gets criticized for not calling those timeouts, but it's a valid criticism in this instance because they came the Lobos came back. However, he saved that timeout, and guess what? He had one timeout left. He used it for the challenge, and you have to have a timeout to do a challenge. So he has that timeout. Now he makes the challenge, and like you said, they started looking at it. CBS, Gene Steratore, their rules analyst, said Aztec ball. And that was initially kind of the feel from watching the replays. But as it went on, you're starting to think, okay, there's not conclusive evidence. However, what the San Diego State coaches told me when they went to Nate Hall, one of the officials, and said, well, what are you guys looking at? What are you thinking? And he said, it went off Tay Simmons' jersey. And in some angles, maybe it looks that way. There's a CBS angle where you can clearly see daylight between the ball and the jersey as it goes out of bounds. And so I think that's the frustration for a lot of fans, is that he probably just fumbled the ball out of bounds. Did he get fouled before? Maybe, maybe not, but that's not reviewable. Just the out of bounds is.
Yep.
And so I think that's the frustration of San Diego State fans. It's compounded by, and you could see in that tweet in the Grand Canyon game, there was a sort of a phantom call on Tay Simmons, same guy, with 1.8 seconds left, that gave Grand Canyon 2 free throws. They won the game. So people feel like they've been screwed twice. You get those 2 games back, maybe they're going to the tournament now. That said, I'll say one more thing about this. They had a game against Boise State this year at home that went to triple overtime. In that game, Jeremiah Oden, who actually did not play yesterday, fouled out. The referee screwed it up and gave the wrong number to the scorer, and he was allowed to play basically with 5 fouls, hit a 3 in the third overtime. San Diego State won by 3. So you got to look at that one and say they probably got a gift in that one. So maybe these things balance out a little bit. But you don't know, you can't assume San Diego State's going to get the ball there and score.
Yeah.
You might not score, and the Lobos, or maybe they score, the Lobos go down and score again. The way the game was going, that probably was going to happen. So I don't think you can honestly, 100% say they would have won the game, but I think we can, if you step back and look at it, I think the referees probably blew that call.
I think that's fair, Mark. Agree with mostly everything you said there. And I think the point you made in part was that, San Diego State still has to score on that possession, right? I mean, it's going to be a half-court possession. A lot of time has been taken to review the play. You got to think that Olen and his staff are talking to the guys about, if it's their ball, this is the defensive coverage we want
100%.
to run. Yeah. So, it could have went either way. But Dad, I'll turn it to you.
Mark, you made some points about calls. I officiated at the high school level for 22 years. And we had Billy Gracie, who's one of the officials here out of Albuquerque, one of the evaluators for the Mountain West. We've had him on before. And you mentioned calls. You mentioned about Odom. They go both ways, man. My thing with that, and I used to be, when I coached and played, I was one of the worst there was with officials, man. I was, until I became one. And that doesn't mean I didn't mess up my share of calls. I sure did. But I think things happen. And, my thing is control what you can control. They're going to send the film to the Mountain West Conference. They'll review it. And, maybe those guys lose a game. They do get evaluated right away after the game. They do get evaluated. And calls happen. And I'm not saying that the way I looked at it, and I saw it looked like it went off to net, man. It did. I couldn't see where I was at. I was where you were at. And I couldn't see that review. I couldn't see but then Lobo fans are commenting like, what about this call? What about that call? And that's what I mean, at the end of the game. And that's a crucial call. I get it. I get that. But, I'm going to ask you this because you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. And for Lobo fans, hold your breath, man. This doesn't mean this is going to happen. But you think if Arizona State gets rid of Bobby Hurley, which is a possibility, you think Coach Olen could be on the way there?
I think so. I mean, he's been mentioned in that job. I think, and here's the tough thing. I think I've talked to him a couple times. He's really enjoying it in New Mexico. And you got to understand, this is a guy who spent 21 years living in La Jolla. I mean, La Jolla is heaven on earth.
Gorgeous.
It is
Jeez.
Gorgeous.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
It was 85 degrees here today on March 1st. Crystal clear. People are at the beach. I mean, it's been this way all January and February. We've had all our rain in 2 storms that lasted 3 days each, and it's been summer ever since. He lived in this city for 21 years, and it's a shock to your system to go to Albuquerque, just as it would be the other way around. But he loves it. I mean, he says, he loves the food, he loves his house, he loves the views, he loves the people, he loves the community, the basketball fandom. He loves all that, and so I don't think he'd want to leave, but if you're a college basketball coach right now, it's power conferences and it's mid-majors. And it used to be those kind of overlapped a little bit. They don't overlap anymore. It's all the money's in the power conferences. The mid-majors every now and then can get out can get into a tournament or beat a power conference here and there. But those days, the gap is going like this. And one of the things I just wrote about is I'm looking at the bubble, and I'm looking at who could make the tournament, who might not. Since the tournament expanded to, and I'll get to your answer in a second, to 68 teams, right, in 2011, and they started the first 4, so it gave a few more chances. Mid-majors have gotten on average 6 bids, at-large bids a year, not automatics, at-larges. And some years has been as high as 10. 2 years ago, it was 7. Well, last year it went down to 4, and no mid-majors made the Sweet 16. This year, we're looking at 3 right now, and that's including New Mexico. If you're looking at Joe Lenardi, New Mexico's the last team in. Santa Clara is like the third to last team in. They're both would be going to the first 4, and then you have St. Mary's. That's it for mid-majors. And so if you're at a mid-major school and you have a chance to go to a power conference school that has really deep pockets and is really serious about getting good in basketball, is going to give you $12 million a year in revenue share for your basketball team and NIL, you have to go if you're going to be serious as a coach. If you just want to coach and maybe make the tournament every 3 or 4 years, maybe try to compete for a league title, and you're at a school where the expectations are to go to the tournament and do something in the tournament, that's hard to achieve. And so I think I can't speak for him, but if I'm in his shoes, as much as I would, it seems as he likes Albuquerque, I think you have to go. And if the Colorado job opens, we all know who the athletic director is there. Probably his first call is going to be to Eric. He'd have to go. And so it's a rough spot for fans, but this is the reality of mid-major basketball. Until they put a cap on the spending in college sports, which I don't see happening anytime soon, the mid-majors are just going to start becoming JV basketball. And it's sad to say it, but that's what it's going to be.
I'll tell you what, so one more comment, and I'll give it back to my son. I think, look, I can't be a Lobo homer and say, please stay. What you explained, it makes sense. It makes sense, even though you don't want to hear it if you're here, right? Because Pitino, he won 20 games 3 years in a row. Coach Olen in his first year has won 20 games. So Lobo, basketball is on a good path. But if they come with a better one and they offer him that, you're right. They offer him that kind of money. You're right. You're right. And people can get mad about it and, say whatever they want. What would they do?
What would they do? And it's not just the NIL, it's also going to be the salary. I mean, what's he making, $1 million?
He's going to get 1.7,
I think off the top of my head, Mark, it's 1.25 mil.
1.25. He's going to get it doubled.
Yeah.
And
the only thing,
if you're in New Mexico, you don't want to match that because that's 1.25 million more that you could be giving athletes. Yep. And so that's the thing. The mid-major schools, I mean, that's one of the problems that San Diego State has right now is that Brian Dutcher makes $2.5 million a year. It's been a long time coming. I mean, he was an assistant making 150 for, 30 years.
Yeah.
So he's getting his money, but, he went to the national championship game. But the problem is in their model, you're paying your coach $2.5 million. They probably should be paying the coach $1 million. And when he leaves, when he retires in a few years, they probably will pay a coach $1 million and take that 1.5 and send it to the athletes.
Sure.
And that's just, those are the realities when, your conference is paying you, $5 million a year, $6 million a year versus 45, 50, 60, 70, 80 million, like in the power conferences. It's just straight numbers.
Yeah.
Son.
Yeah. We're speaking with Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune. Mark, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. And the last question for me, storied series between UNM and San Diego State. I have the official total 53 wins for UNM, 47 wins for the Aztecs. I could be off on that. But, man, these teams have just had so many battles in the last 2 decades. Just kind of your favorite memories of this series, if you had some.
Well, this is easy for me because I was there when Lamont Butler hit that three-pointer.
Yeah.
And at time we didn't know it, but it was sort of a harbinger of things to come because we all know what he did in the Final Four. But the backstory on that one is they played in the Maui Invitational earlier in that season in November, and they played Arkansas. They were up 4 with like 15 seconds left, right?
Yeah.
And Lamont lost track of the score and got confused and fouled the guy on purpose and then turned it over. And they came back and tied it. and then won in overtime.
Yep.
And, you know, we got back to San Diego, and he said, I'll talk to Mark. And he owned it. He just goes, I screwed it up. I got to learn from it. I'm going to get better. And the next time in that situation, I'll be better. And sure enough, here we go. 2-3 months later, they're in the pit, they're playing, and he makes, makes that 3-pointer, which I know probably was dagger to the heart of Lobos fans. But for that kid, after what he'd been through, to have that moment was incredible. I mean, that would have been enough for him in terms of redemption. And then go to the Final Four a month after that, and then hit that shot to win the Final Four game, and the only buzzer beater in Final Four history to win a game in the semis. And I mean, it was pretty cool. So that was an easy one for me. But I've been there for 13 or 14 of them. Yep. And they're all, there's been a couple blowouts on both sides, but there's been some just incredible games.
No doubt. Dad, any final questions for Mark?
Mark, just can't thank you enough for joining us. I think I told you that yesterday, that I remember Smokey Gaines, man, back in the LA arena, and Michael Cage and Tony Gwynn. That's how far back I remember, the Lobos of the Aztecs playing. And I think, like I told you yesterday, I remember when Arizona and Arizona State were in the WAC, and then they left. And, I remember them coming in here, Freddie the Fox Snowden, Ned Wolk. I remember all those things. So we're going to miss San Diego State. It's been a great rivalry. I still remember Jalen House, at Viejas a couple years ago. And then yesterday, it was kind of a deja vu. BJ Davis got the ball with a full head of steam. He brought in the ball, and then they gave it back to me of Lamont Butler. I was like, because the Butler, that's what happened to him. Nobody stopped the ball a couple years ago, and he drained that three. So I'm going to miss San Diego State as a rival in the Mountain West. It's been great, great atmosphere, great rivalry. Great games. So can't thank you enough for joining us. We really appreciate it. No problem.
One thing I'll add to that is Eric Olen had a great idea on this, because, Brian Dutcher said, I will not play any former Mountain West or any of our former Mountain West teams in the non-conference if they're at altitude. He goes, well, I'm not going to altitude. It's too hard for us. And I'm just not going to do it unless I have to. So obviously Colorado State and Utah State are coming with them to the Pac-12. They're in altitude, but that means no Wyoming, no Nevada, no Air Force, and no New Mexico on the road. And then so Eric said, well, why don't you buy us, as a guarantee game in Viejas Arena? But they're not going to buy somebody that could beat them. So that's probably out. But then Eric said, he goes, we could be a little creative here. Why don't we play on a neutral floor somewhere? And I could see that maybe happening, because one thing to remember, all these Pac-12 teams are going to need non-conference games. They're only going to play a 16 game, because it's going to be a 9-team basketball league with Gonzaga in it, 8 for football, 9 with Gonzaga. So that's an 16 game conference season. The total season next year is going to go to 32. That means they got to get 16 non-conference games versus right now they get like 10. It's a lot of games they got to find, and they don't want to travel that much. They're looking for teams in the West. Maybe both teams go to Phoenix. It's halfway, and fans from San Diego like to go to Phoenix. I know it's not a terrible drive from Albuquerque to get to Phoenix. And so maybe, they play in one of these neutral court games. They have them every year right around Christmas in the Phoenix Suns Arena. San Diego State's played in one like 3 of the last 5 years they played there. So maybe that's the game they get. And I could see that happening. So I don't know if the series is completely dead. If they can get their heads together, I mean, obviously Eric Olen, if he's still there, and Brian Dutcher are really good friends and know each other and might try to work something out. So I think we got a little bit of hope that we could see these guys play again. It just won't be in the pit or Viejas.
Yeah, that would certainly be welcomed by Lobo fans for sure, Mark. We definitely would love to see that on our end. We've been joined by Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune. You can find him at SDUT Ziegler on X. Also subscribe to the San Diego Union Tribune. Mark, thank you again for joining us, man.
Yep. And one more thing.
Yep.
These teams could play in the conference tournament. I think they're going to be seeded 2 and 3. That's a semifinal game, like 9:00 on a Friday night in Vegas. We could have it.
Even more incentive for everybody to get out to the Mountain West tournament. It's going to be a good one. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Be right back on the Pit Press Live.
Not just a day or a week. This President's Day event lasts all month long at Capitol Ford in Santa Fe. Find monumental savings on our best Ford selection, like a new 2026 Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, now $5,800 off MSRP. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport, just $400 a month lease for 36 months. So hurry and save during this President's Day event all month long at Capitol Ford in Santa Fe.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. I'm your host, Nick Nunez, joined by my co-host, the voice of Western New Mexico Athletics, Ed Nunez. Our guest was Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune. Dad, thought it was great to talk to Mark. Brought in a lot of nice perspective on a lot of topics.
You know, he did. And look, there's some Lobo fans that commented about ASU maybe not being, better deal. I was there 2 years ago with at the Final Four with your uncle. And I remember reading something in the Arizona Republic. There it is, not buying Ziegler's argument for ASU. Tino was right about being at the right brand of school. UNM is a great brand. ASU is bottom tier Big 12. Those are career killers. Now, ME, that's a comment from ME. I couldn't get the last words there. ME, VT, 3GF. Now, okay, that might be some truth to that. As I was saying, when I was there, they were talking about Arizona State. This is 2 years ago. And Dan Hurley was in the Final Four, and he was talking about his brother Bobby. And he said they need to give him more support, better facilities. And the facilities, I guarantee, have not improved. So, but it's a move to the Big 12. If these are all ifs. But even if it's not Arizona State, you heard what Mark Ziegler said. There's going to be Power Four conferences looking at him. That's just the reality of it, man. The thing that I thought about yesterday when we were by the ramp, son, you and I were going up to the press room, is I saw Ryan Berryman and Eric Olen embrace, and they've got a great relationship. They do. But, Nick, we're realists here. I want him to stay 5 years. I like him. I think he's a dang good coach, man. But if something happens like that, and somebody just mentioned UCLA, then Mick Cronin's out there. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Mick Cronin's out. So, not yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going to make a move there. Is that a possibility? And when Nick, I got to laugh when he said about La Jolla. Your aunt lived there for 26 years in San Diego. And I remember when she took me to La Jolla, I thought I was in heaven, man. I mean, it's so beautiful there. It's like, why would you ever leave that? It's gorgeous, and Coach Olen, of course, got a better offer to come here. Nothing against Albuquerque. It's beautiful too. But I don't, San Diego and Steve Lavin got fired at University of San Diego. I don't think that's a target for Eric Olen. But the thing is here, he's got 20 wins in his first season. There's going to be people that are going to be interested in him. That's the bottom line. Whether we get mad about it or, do whatever we're going to do, that's just reality, son.
No doubt, Dad. Let's get to some of these other comments. Then we'll talk about a few other points in UNM's 81-76 win over San Diego State. We're just going to go through some of the comments. We want to thank Jer Bear Langer. Jer Bear on X, appreciate you, man. Couple of things. Tannett got fouled. Furthermore, I watch it. The more I see the ref's point of view, it actually might have touched the jersey of Simmons last. It's really hard to tell. And yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that call, Dad. I thought Mark broke it down pretty well. The biggest thing for me, maybe they missed it, maybe they didn't. San Diego State still had to score on the next possession, and I don't know if they would have. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's all part of the game, man. There's been other comments. And I don't know if I'll find it, but there was that call, obviously, in the first half. Could have been a shot clock violation in the final seconds. Refs didn't call it. San Diego State still got the ball. Looked like Tannett may have been fouled there. There were so many calls where, San Diego State fans didn't like it. UNM fans didn't like it. It's all just part of the game, man. Sometimes the whistles go your way and sometimes they don't. You got to live with it. That is part of the game. Same thing here. Doesn't there have to be irrefutable evidence to overturn a call? Also, do refs cringe when they see Simmons non-call when he's slapping Tinet's arm? Yep, there's an argument there that they missed that call too. So that's all part of the game. Let's see. Here's from John Romero. As a dedicated Lobo fan, it's getting old. The head coach stepping on us to get to their next job and shiny new car and big house. And I think, Mark touched on this too, Dad, right? I mean, this is just part of the world we live in now in college athletics. Coaches and players are on the move constantly. The price just keeps going up to retain players and coaches. If UNM could match a big offer from a Power 5 school, who knows? I mean, we just talked to Ryan Berriman about this time last week. He talked about the resources that UNM is trying to dedicate to retaining Coach Olen. I think the important thing is that Ryan Berriman, the acting athletic director, and Eric Olen, the head coach of UNM men's basketball, seem to have a good working relationship. Yesterday at the game, I saw them walking up the pit ramp together, or right before Eric Olen came into the media room. I think that relationship is there. RB's been around for a long time, Dad. If there's anybody, with UNM athletics that could give us a chance to retain Coach Olen, if that's what both parties want, you got to be confident that hopefully RB will still be part of that, Dad.
I think the world of Ryan. I really do. And Jalen Dominguez as well. I want to mention him. We saw him on the floor last night or yesterday. And, they're both from here, and that's not to say that they don't have other candidates, from elsewhere as far as the athletic director. But Nick, it's reality what he said, though. What Mark Ziegler said, that if that kind of money is offered to you and you have a chance, you almost have to go, man. Because and I don't want him to. I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to wish him away. I'm not. Of course not. We have to be realistic in this landscape of NIL. It's just reality. Yeah, look, I'll give you an example, Nick. Mark Bunker at Western New Mexico. He's taken Western to the conference tournament. He's won 21 games. If they have any success in the conference tournament, and I told interim athletic director Matt Enriquez that, hey, you might be looking for a new coach, and Coach Enriquez is realistic. He said we're going to do whatever we can to retain him. We understand that. Nobody's had that success at Western. Not even the late Dick Dragmeister had that, the court named after Coach Drag, and never had that kind of success. So if they have success at the tournament and get invited to the NCAA Division II tournament and he has success there, which I hope he does. I cover Western. I want them to they've had a great season. That's just the way it is, Nick. Olen already is being looked at. He's on the radar of some teams already. And that's not going to go away no matter how much we wish it wasn't true. The more success you have, and that Richard Pitino parlayed 320 win seasons here into a $4 million contract at Xavier. Donovan Dent, $3 million at UCLA. JT Toppin, $4 million at Texas Tech. New Mexico cannot match those offers. So, look, son, whatever happens, right? I mean, I'm going to be a fan no matter what happens. So, but those are just the realities. We can't wish it away and say that's not going to happen. Or I think we have to be realistic about it.
Another comment here from Joe Pettis, 5384. If there is anyone that has contact with Tomislav, tell him that he can improve his free throws. Just bank it off the glass. Follow-up comment. Points count the same, noise matter. How you get in glass, F the criticism. Maybe a fair point, Dad. Maybe a fair point. Tomislav against Nevada, he's 1 for 5 from the free throw line. Against San Diego State, he goes 4 for 8. So, he has not shot the ball well from the line. But, man, UNM is not anywhere without his production yesterday, obviously, right, Ed?
We were in the press room, and what he said, he felt he had to be a leader. I'm the oldest guy on the team, he said. And he even looked at himself. I needed to stop whining. He said it himself to the officials and be a leader and take care of business. And that's what he did. And he is, and again, he's a bull, and went right at it. He said that about Magoon Guath. He's a great defender, but he's not physical. He's not strong. He's not that strong. And I thought, I got to be honest, going to Magoon Guath, he's shooting. He was 0 for 4 from 3. It's like, hey man, keep shooting those. We'll live with that, right? And nothing against Guath. He's a good player, but I thought Tomislav Buljan was on a mission. When you have 24 and 18 like that, That's just effort, second effort. On that ball is mine. Buljan also drew 5 fouls yesterday. Luke Hopt drew 6. And all this sandwiched around a poor game by Dayton Albury, 0 of 10 from the field. But you mentioned, son, that last play that almost went awry, man. That ball went up in the air. It seemed like it hung in the air forever. You mentioned that probably only Albury, maybe Chol, would have a chance to get that ball and snatch it out of the sky like that.
For sure. A couple more comments that I wanted to make, just 2 points about the game, and then we will get out of here. This is from Ice Baby 75988H. Hello, gentlemen. Hope everybody's doing fantastic. Great guest on the show, and I've never heard it explained the way Mark just explained it. Hopefully something changes soon when it comes to spending on the NIL. Yeah, I think, the way that Mark Ziegler broke it down, Dad, phenomenal, man. And that's just what we're talking about in college athletics now. It's about paying players. How much are they worth? Here is a comment from Raynard Ford, 641. Coach Olen will head home to Southern California. UCLA, his next stop, power conferences. And that very well could be true. There was another commenter that said Mick Cronin may be out at UCLA. There's certainly been some controversy surrounding Mick Cronin. Had a good first successful season, got UCLA deep in the NCAA tournament, but just has underachieved expectations for the most part. It's possible. Let's see. Juan Martinez, 64. Sad what money is doing to amateur sports. Everything makes sense. And as a fan, this is sad, but as a coach, very understandable. Yep. Steve Alford's talked about the challenges with dealing with NIL, and you saw that last year. That Nevada team that he had with Kobe Sanders and Davidson just did not click. And a lot of the rumors were that players were upset with the amount of NIL money that other players were getting. So this comment from Steve Singletary, we need him to experience more pit games, but money does talk. I think that there may be some context there. Let's see. Juan Martinez, Colorado is the school to worry about, and UCLA down the road. I hope Berriman is hired and gets creative. We've talked about that. This one from Kino Keeney. I think it's just a reality in sports. You can make the argument that there is 5 to 10 jobs in sports that aren't considered stepping stones. I think Olen has represented New Mexico well, like Pitino did. He does, and he's got a different way of doing it. Eric Olen, a little bit more introverted when you watch him in the press conferences that are made available on UNM's YouTube page. Doesn't have that type A personality per se, but he's very thoughtful, Dad. And you know what? He's got a different relationship with the media than Rick Pitino did. This is just his first year. But I think when it comes to talking basketball, man, I think Eric Olen is always straight up, Dad.
You know what? Sometimes I have to lean in to hear him. He's not the guy that he stays, but you see him on the sidelines. He gets on. I've seen him yell at refs, yell at players. I've seen it. He does get mad. I've never seen him get mad in the press room. He's like Coach Pitino. You ask a question, he'll look you right in the face and answer it. With no emotion though. Never seen him really. That one game against can't remember what game it was. Hey, we got outcoached. We got outplayed. He admitted it. So, look, he's winning. We want him to stay here 5 years, right? And the reality is he probably won't. That's just the reality. Now, somebody mentioned Ryan Berriman, get creative. Look, I love that kid, man. I hope he does get the job. I call him a kid because he's a young guy, but he's established a good resume working with Eddie, working with Fern. He's had some great experiences here at the University of New Mexico in a short time. So, but that's just the way college athletics is. I would hope if Coach Olen does leave, I'm just going to say, heck, I'm not going to worry about that till we hear that. If he does, and Ryan Berryman's the athletic director, Ryan Berryman or whoever it is, Jalen Dominguez, whoever's the AD, will figure it out. And Fern Lovo, he bought in 2 good coaches. He did. Those were some of the best hires in New Mexico history. They really were. So we just got to hope that if those things happen, that somehow the momentum keeps rolling.
Couple more comments, then 2 videos coming your way. We will get out of here. Once again, thank you for joining us on the Pit Press Live. I'm Nick Nunez, joined by Ed Nunez. Comment here from Juan Martinez. Why isn't Chol going after rebounds? Has Chol ever been in foul trouble which is effort to me. Fair point. Antonio Chol, according to the box score yesterday, 1 rebound. I don't have his rebound numbers in front of me, Dad. You know, Antonio Chol always gets criticized by Lobo fans, and I get it. I think sometimes the criticism is fair. We could be getting more out of him, but he kind of is who he is at this point. You already kind of know what you're going to get from him. So, you know, you can continue to try to berate him if you want to. That's fine. The guy is a pretty good three-point shooter when he gets in volume. He has had some good games. Good game against Grand Canyon on the road. I think what you want from Chol is 2 to 4 made three-pointers a game. I thought he took the ball to the hole a little bit more against San Diego State, Dad. I want to say he drew at least 1 foul. Let me see. I've got his free throw statistics in front of me. He went 1 for 2 from the line. So he got to the line once, and that was off attacking the basket. You know, one day, hopefully we have a complete game from Antonio Chol. Until then, appreciate what he gives you. Last comment here, Fly to Sky 505. You guys should get Coach Olen to come on the show. We'd love to have Coach Olen on the show. We will see if we will make that request to UNM. If not, no worries. We understand Coach Olen is a very busy guy. You know, after this week winds up, then he's going to go to the Mountain West Conference tournament. That starts Wednesday midweek after next. And so we will see what we can do about that. Dad, I wanted to talk about a couple plays in the game, kind of really down the stretch in UNM's 81-76 win over San Diego State. The first one is that Luke hopped three-pointer when it was tied 74-74. And I'm going to pull up that clip now. Big shot from Luke Hopt. And, you know, Dad, that was courtesy of Mo Maestas in the state legislature for the state of New Mexico. Mo, a big proponent of UNM athletics. He's a voice in the legislature for the Lobos for sure. Got a great clip of Luke Hopt's three-pointer. I mean, we talked about Luke Hopt a little bit, Dad. He was huge in this game with 17 points, knocked down 2 threes, but that was a big-time shot, man.
You know what? Coach Olen talks about paint touches. Uriah Tenet, 2 feet in the paint, drive the kick, boom. Luke Hopt open, and a big shot. That's why I asked Coach Olen what I asked him on Friday. You know, because once Luke Hopt starts scoring, he's a connector. Everybody feels that he's going to dish off. That was a huge shot. And again, those paint touches matter. They really do.
Last play I want to talk about, and I unfortunately couldn't grab the footage from it, but it was Dayton Albury's catch, man. So let's recap that sequence, Dad. We didn't talk about that too much. About 30 seconds left on the clock. Ball is inbounded to Tomislav Buljan. This is after the replay where the officials determined that it was going to be New Mexico basketball in the deep corner. Ball is inbounded to Tomislav Buljan. It looked like he was wanting to hit Dayton Albury for a pass down court. And he said in the media, in the postgame press conference, that it slipped out of his hands. Well, it slipped, and it was thrown in the direction of a crowd of San Diego State Aztecs. Miles Bird was one of them. I mean, Albury was one of 2 or 3 Aztec players in that vicinity, and he just went up, made an athletic play, and came down with that catch, drew the foul on Bird. Dad, that was huge.
You know what? That ball seemed to hang in the air forever. It really did. And, you know, again, Buljan had a great game. I'm glad. I think things bounces. You know, son, you mentioned something about bounces going to people, a team's way. When you coach, sometimes it didn't go your way. That bounce went New Mexico's way, or catch, or whatever you want to call it. It just was meant to be, I guess, because when I saw George Scott afterward, and George is like, "What the, you know how George talks. What the heck were we doing, man?" You know, but it worked out. It worked out well for UNM, and give Albury, who's, you know, again, him or Chol is probably the only 2 athletes on that team, and that might have been able to make that play.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just a couple other things I wanted to touch on. Shout out to a couple other Lobos who played well yesterday. Yeah, Jake Hall, 14 points, 5 rebounds. He was 3 of 8 from the three-point line. You know, Dad, it just didn't really seem like he was that go-to option for UNM offensively. You know, we're always looking for Jake to get shots, but he had 14 points. It felt like a quiet 14 points. He had a big basket in the final couple minutes of the game, right in the mid lane. It was in the mid-range. So he hit a big shot there. And then Uriah Tenet, 10 points, 5 assists. Thought he was great in the pick and roll. He knocked down that three from the left corner. That was big. And then JT Rock came in and was physical down low with San Diego State. He got called for that flagrant one in the first half, but he finished with 6 points, only had 1 rebound. But I thought he was a physical presence for UNM inside as well, Dad.
Went quick on one of his moves, caught, spun, didn't wait, looked really, really good, confident. So that comes with more reps, more work. Somebody's really working with him. You can tell that because he didn't have that earlier in the season, the quick catch, the quick go. And I turned to you, I'm like, wow, that was a great move. So, yeah, I think we're seeing some better. But, I got to tell you this too, Nick. Maybe that'll put the talk to playing Buljan and Rock together. That's not going to happen, man. It's not. It's not going to happen, Buljan, 24-18. That's not going to – Coach Olen, and I'm not saying it's a bad suggestion. I'm just saying Coach Olen is comfortable this late in the season. He's not about to make that kind of change. I don't see it. And yesterday with Buljan, 24-18, I definitely don't see it now.
We recapped UNM's 81-76 win over San Diego State. Our guest was Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune. Upcoming games for UNM men's basketball, they will take on Colorado State on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Mountain Time tip-off. It's on CBS Sports Network. And then UNM will finish this season in Logan, Utah at the D. Glen Spectrum at 2 p.m. on Saturday, March 7th. They will take on Utah State. Big week for the Lobos, Dad. I mean, Colorado State has won 7 in a row. They're 19-10, didn't lose a game in the month of February. And the Rams are probably the hottest team in the league coming into the pit for the final time, Dad. It's going to be a big one on Wednesday.
Another team I'm going to miss. I've watched Colorado State for years. So, looking forward to that game. And New Mexico needs to win that one for sure.
I want to thank Eric Moulton, the owner and founder of the Pit Press podcast. Eric joined me last night, Dad, for the District 158 tournament championship between Volcano Vista and Cleveland. Was a color commentator, did a phenomenal job, man. If you subscribe to ProView Networks, got a Game Vision Pass, check it out. Eric does a great job of breaking down the game. It was a close game between Volcano Vista and Cleveland last night. The Hawks came out on top with a 71-67 win. But Eric did a phenomenal job breaking it down. Also want to thank him for putting this show together. We wouldn't be anywhere without Eric Moulton. Couple more comments, then we're going to get out of here. This is from Raynard Ford, 641. Great show, Pit Press. Thank you, Lobos fan. Appreciate you, Raynard Ford. Juan Martinez, very good show and informative for us fans. We appreciate you, Juan. Fly to Sky 505. Gracias, Pit Press. Great show. And then from Kino Keeney, how about WNMU having a historical year, Dad, real quick on the Mustangs?
They'll play St. Mary's in the first round of the Lone Star Conference, and the Mustangs beating them, I thought, decisively at home a couple weeks ago. St. Mary's got the first one, but Western won about a week ago in Silver City and beat them what I think pretty decisively. I think the Mustangs can make some noise in that conference tournament. I really do.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Pit Press Live. For Eric Moulton, Ed Nunez, our guest, Mark Ziegler of the San Diego Union Tribune, I'm Nick Nunez saying good night.